The papers landed on her chest while she was still bleeding. The smell of antiseptic hung heavy in the hospital room, mixed with sweat, metal, and exhaustion. Machines beeped softly around her, indifferent to the fact that her entire life had just been torn apart. Her body shook, not from pain anymore, but from something deeper. Shock, confusion, disbelief. She had given birth less than an hour ago. Her hair was damp. Her hands were weak. Her heart was still racing from the effort of bringing life into the world. She had not even held her child yet. The nurse had taken the baby away for routine checks. She was still trying to breathe normally when everything collapsed. He stood at the foot of the bed, perfectly dressed, calm, distant. His face held no warmth, no relief, no trace of the man who once held her hand and promised forever. Behind him stood his mother, arms crossed, eyes sharp with satisfaction she did not bother to hide. The papers rested on her chest like a verdict. Divorce. No explanation first. No comfort. No hesitation. Her eyes struggled to focus as she tried to read. The words blurred. Her hands trembled too badly to lift the pages. She looked up at him, searching his face for something familiar. Anything human. There was nothing. This was not an argument. It was a transaction. The timing was deliberate, surgical, cruel, in a way that required planning. Minutes after childbirth. As if her pain had been scheduled. As if her worth expired the moment the child arrived. She whispered his name, barely audible, but he did not step closer. He did not touch her. He did not lower his voice. He simply waited. His mother leaned forward slightly, close enough for her presence to feel suffocating. Her expression carried triumph, disguised as disappointment. She had never liked her. That much had been clear from the beginning. But today, she did not pretend. The woman in the bed had served her purpose. That was all. The nurse returned with the baby moments later and froze at the tension in the room. She sensed something was wrong. Very wrong. The baby cried softly, unaware that its arrival had triggered destruction instead of joy. The mother reached out instinctively, desperate to hold her child, but the nurse hesitated. She looked toward the standing man for instruction. He nodded once. The baby was placed briefly in her arms. The weight was real, warm, alive. The tiny chest rose and fell against her own. Tears streamed down her face as she pressed her lips to the baby's forehead. Knowing something inside her had already changed forever. She did not know yet how much she was about to lose. The papers were still there, waiting. She signed. Not because she agreed, because she was too broken to fight. Because she did not know she still could. They left immediately after. No goodbye. No explanation. Just footsteps fading down a hospital corridor while she lay there holding her child, divorced, discarded, and bleeding. Outside the room, decisions were already being made without her. By the time she was discharged, everything was gone. The house was no longer hers. Her access cards did not work. Her phone calls went unanswered. Her accounts were frozen. The lawyer she had never met sent documents she barely understood. Custody arrangements were temporary, visitation limited. Framed as concern for the child. Never for her. She moved into a small apartment that smelled of old paint and silence. A place that echoed with the absence of everything she had lost. Nights were the worst. The baby slept beside her, and she lay awake, replaying the moment the papers touched her chest over and over again. Why then? Why like that? Why so cold? People talked. They always do. Some said she trapped him. Some said the marriage had been dead for years. Some said powerful families do not make emotional decisions. They make strategic ones. No one asked her. No one wanted her version. She stopped correcting them. Pain teaches silence. Weeks passed. She healed physically faster than emotionally. Her body recovered, but something inside her hardened. She stopped crying eventually, not because it stopped hurting, but because something else replaced the tears. Awareness. She started noticing details she had ignored before. The way money moved without her knowledge. The way documents were signed in her name but never shown to her. The way her questions were always brushed aside. She had trusted completely. And trust, she learned, is expensive when given to the wrong people. One afternoon, a letter arrived. Plain envelope. No return address. She almost threw it away. Inside was a name she had not heard in years. A firm she did not recognize. Legal language she barely understood. But one sentence made her sit down. It referenced her mother. Her mother had died long before this marriage, quietly, without ceremony. She had believed there was nothing left behind. No assets, no secrets. That belief had been wrong. Very wrong. The letter was not dramatic. It was formal, respectful, careful. It stated that certain conditions had now been met, conditions she had never known existed. It requested a meeting. She did not tell anyone. Not the lawyer assigned to her divorce. Not her ex-husband. Not his family. Something told her this was not meant to be shared yet. When she walked into the office days later, she expected paperwork, maybe an apology, maybe an explanation for a mistake. She did not expect silence, the kind of silence that follows revelation. The man across from her slid a folder across the table, thick, heavy final. He did not smile. He did not exaggerate. He simply said that her life had been built on an assumption that was no longer true, and that what had been taken from her was not all she possessed, not even close. She listened without interrupting. Her hands were steady now. For the first time since the hospital room, she felt something unfamiliar rise in her chest. Not hope, clarity. Outside, the world continued as if nothing had changed. Cars passed. People laughed. Life moved forward, unaware that a balance had just shifted. She walked out of the office, carrying nothing visible. But everything had changed. And somewhere far away, the people who thought the story was over were still celebrating an ending they did not understand. They believed they had won. They did not yet realize the story had just begun. The truth did not arrive all at once. It unfolded slowly, deliberately, like a curtain being pulled back inch by inch. Each page she read replaced confusion with understanding. Each document stripped away another lie she had lived inside for years without knowing it. Her mother had not been ordinary. She had not been weak. She had been careful. What looked like a quiet life had been camouflage. What appeared like absence had been preparation. The accounts existed long before the marriage. The trusts had been structured with precision. The names were layered. The access restricted by time and condition. One condition had now been fulfilled. Divorce. Another condition had followed. Childbirth, and with those two moments combined, the system unlocked. The numbers did not feel real at first. They were too large. Too distant. They sat on the page like symbols rather than facts. She reread them, not because she doubted them, but because her mind refused to accept what her eyes already understood. Billions, not potential, not projected, existing, waiting. She closed the folder slowly. Her breathing remained calm. That surprised her more than the figures. There was no excitement, no sudden rush of joy. Just a strange stillness, like standing at the edge of something vast without needing to step forward yet. Power does not always announce itself with emotion. Sometimes it arrives quietly. She left without telling anyone. The lawyer did not push. He had seen this reaction before. Shock did not always look like disbelief. Sometimes it looked like silence. That night, she sat in the small apartment holding her child, listening to the steady rhythm of the baby's breath. The room was dim. The furniture is sparse. The contrast between her surroundings and what she now knew could have felt cruel. Instead, it felt grounding. She did not want luxury yet. She wanted control. The next weeks were about learning, not spending, not revealing, learning. She met with people her mother had trusted. Advisors who spoke carefully and did not flatter. Men and women who treated her with respect without knowing her story. They explained structures, influence, responsibility. They did not ask about revenge. They asked about timing. At the same time, life on the other side continued without her. Her ex-husband resumed appearances. Public events. Carefully curated smiles. He spoke of moving forward. Of focusing on the future. Of stability. His family closed ranks. They believed they had contained the damage. They were wrong. She watched quietly. She learned how reputations are built and dismantled, how money shapes silence, how influence bends perception. She learned that cruelty rarely travels alone. It is usually protected by systems that benefit from it. She did not interfere, yet her first move was maternal, not financial. Custody, not as a battle, but as a correction. She gathered evidence patiently. Medical records, timelines, patterns of absence. She documented everything without emotion. The lack of presence, the lack of interest, the transactional nature of involvement, she did not exaggerate. Truth was sufficient. When the petition was filed, it surprised him. He had assumed permanence. The hearing was calm, professional, unremarkable on the surface, but the weight of preparation mattered. Judges respond to consistency, not drama. The arrangement shifted, not fully, but enough to signal change, enough to create discomfort. He noticed then. The calls began, short at first, confused, irritated. He framed it as concern, as misunderstanding, as timing. She responded through attorneys. Distance is powerful when it replaces desperation. Meanwhile, movement began elsewhere. Audits, board inquiries. Nothing aggressive. Nothing illegal. Just attention. The kind that follows large sums of money changing posture. She did not direct it openly. She did not need to. Structures already existed. Her presence simply activated them. Companies linked to his family received scrutiny. Compliance reviews. Questions about governance. Nothing accusatory, but enough to slow momentum. Investors do not like uncertainty. Press notices followed quietly. Analysts speculated. Articles appeared asking neutral questions that carried sharp implications. The narrative shifted slightly. Not against him. Away from him. He worked harder to maintain control. More meetings. More reassurance. More appearances. Stress does not weaken power immediately. It erodes it. At home, she remained unchanged. Same apartment. Same routine. Same quiet evenings with her child. She did not upgrade. She did not announce anything that unsettled people more than extravagance would have, because restraint signals intention. Eventually, he requested a meeting. Not legal, personal, she considered it. Not because she needed closure, but because understanding the opponent matters. The meeting was brief, controlled. Civil. He spoke more than she did. He explained decisions, framed them as necessity, as pressure, as influence from others. He avoided responsibility without denying outcomes. She listened. Not to forgive, to measure. When he finished, she spoke calmly. She did not accuse. She did not threaten. She clarified one thing. She was no longer negotiating her worth. That statement ended the conversation. After that, the unraveling accelerated. A major partnership paused, pending review. Another withdrew quietly. Boards requested changes. Advisors advised caution. Risk tolerance shifted. He felt it before he understood it. Influence leaving does not announce itself. It simply stops answering. Meanwhile, her presence grew elsewhere. Not publicly, structurally. Shares voting rights consolidated. Interests aligned with long-term stability rather than visibility. Her mother's preparation revealed itself in layers. This had never been about protection alone. It had been about succession, and she was now ready. The moment came unexpectedly. A regulatory filing exposed conflicts that could no longer be ignored. Not criminal yet, but enough. The market responded harshly. His confidence fractured publicly for the first time. Cameras captured it. The same outlets that once praised his decisiveness now questioned his judgment. And still, she remained silent. The power shift was no longer invisible. It was undeniable. But the final movement had not yet arrived. Because consequence is not the same as collapse, and what was coming next would not be fast. It would be complete. Collapse never arrives the way people imagine. There is no single explosion. No dramatic moment where everything ends at once. It comes quietly, then suddenly, then all at the same time. By the time the public realized something was wrong, The damage was already irreversible. The investigation did not begin with accusations. It began with disclosures. Financial irregularities that had been overlooked when money flowed easily now looked suspicious under pressure. Auditors dug deeper. Regulators requested clarification. Partners distanced themselves to protect their own interests. His family tried to control the narrative. Statements were released. Advisors reassured stakeholders. Lawyers insisted everything was routine. But routine does not freeze accounts. Routine does not trigger emergency board meetings. Routine does not make banks stop returning calls. The first arrest was not his. It was someone close. A longtime associate. Someone who had handled numbers quietly for years. That arrest changed everything. Cooperation followed. Documents surfaced, emails, transfers, timelines that did not align with the official story. The structure began to collapse from the inside. And still, she did not appear. She watched from a distance. Not with satisfaction, with precision, because this was no longer personal. This was structural correction. The custody hearing came again. This time, it was different. Evidence was no longer limited to absence or neglect. Now there was instability. Risk, environment. The judge listened carefully. Questions were asked that did not need answers out loud. The ruling shifted decisively. Full custody. No appeals. No delays. When she left the courthouse with her child in her arms, there were no cameras. No press, just quiet relief. The kind that does not shout. That night, she returned home and sat on the floor, holding her child longer than usual. Not because she was afraid of losing them again, but because she finally understood she would not. The media storm followed later. Charges were announced. Not rumors. Not speculation. Formal charges. Financial misconduct. Fraud. Abuse of fiduciary responsibility. His name became associated with headlines he could not control. His family disappeared from public view. Social invitations vanished. Allies rebranded themselves as distant acquaintances. Power does not abandon you dramatically. It pretends it never knew you. During the trial, she was mentioned but never central. That was intentional. This was not a revenge story. It was an accountability story. He looked smaller in court. Not physically, emotionally. The certainty that once defined him had dissolved. The confidence that once filled rooms now struggled to stand. When sentencing was announced, it was severe. Years, not months. Fines that erased fortunes. Assets seized. Foundations dissolved. Generational wealth ended in one judgment, and still, she did not speak. Until the end. The final moment did not happen in a courtroom. It happened months later, quietly, in a different city. A letter arrived. Handwritten, apologetic. Too late. She read it once, then folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer she would never open again. Forgiveness does not require access. Closure does not require reconciliation. Her life moved forward deliberately. She did not rebuild his world. She built her own. The inheritance was never used for spectacle. It was structured, invested, directed. Companies stabilized under her ownership. Jobs protected. Systems corrected. She became known not as the woman who lost everything, but as the woman who restored order. Her child grew in a home filled with calm. No shouting, no fear, no tension disguised as success. Years later, when asked in an interview about the moment everything changed, she did not mention divorce or money. She mentioned silence. The silence after betrayal. The silence where clarity arrives. The silence where you decide who you will become. He had believed power meant control over others. She learned power meant control over herself. And that was the difference that ended everything.